Hello, I'm Dr. Pierresamaan, and it's wonderful being back with you as we continue in this series on unmasking addiction. Recovery and relapse prevention has been the current portion of this series that we've been talking about. There's so much to talk about in this portion, so it's a bit extended than the other portions. And I was thinking the other day as I was writing some more, and by the way, one day all the PDF on all of this will be available if you'd like a copy for yourselves. But as I was writing more, I was thinking, gosh, we could just keep writing forever, adding to all this regarding recovery, because there's so much involved in recovery. It's not just sobriety, it's not just treatment, it's that recovery part that just is a lifelong filling of information, understanding, insights. It could just keep going on and on. So certainly we're going to have to put a limit to what we're talking about in this series. But the words, the knowledge, the information, it's a lifetime of adding to yourself, maturing. And that's sanctification, as far as I'm concerned. Some theology say that sanctification is at that moment of salvation, and others would say sanctification is a process, a lifelong process of drawing closer to God, building of character and so on. And that's what recovery is for everyone. Whether you're coming out of an addiction or not, you're in recovery if you're working towards making yourself better, which makes you a better person, a better wife, a better husband, a better father, a better mother, and the list goes on. So sobriety is not only the only thing to look for, the only thing to strive for. Sobriety is only the start of recovery training. Is there a difference between that sobriety and recovery? So yeah, obviously, since what I've just said, there is a difference. But a lot of people, they look at it as, well, I'm sober, I don't need to do more. Yeah. You heard the term dry drunk. Well, that's a dry drunk. He's sober, but he's not done anything else. He hasn't changed at all. He hasn't improved himself at all. And he's not easy to get along with. The simplest way to think of abstinence or sobriety is a sustained state of no addictive substance or compulsions. Recovery is healing and maturation of the spirit, mind, body from enslavement. If you were once addicted, you were a slave. In fact, from Christianity, the scripture kind of tells us, we're slaves to sin. And in a way, that's like an addiction, isn't it? We tend to want to do those things that we shouldn't be doing. Why can't we stop? Paul said that in Romans 7. Why do I keep doing these things that I know I shouldn't do? Does that make me not a believer? Does that make me a terrible, horrible person? No, it doesn't make you that way. As long as you're working on these things to improve, to do better, you're going to be better. You'll never be as perfect as Christ. You'll never be the ideal. But I feel better when I'm doing better in the day. I feel better when I'm striving to do better. That makes me happier, more content, and so on. We can say a lot more about those kinds of things. So recovery is healing of spirit, soul, that's the mind, spirit, soul, and body. It's all encompassing. It's not just one area. In addiction treatment, abstinence is the beginning of recovery training. For those of you that were in the military, when you hear that training word right away, I know for me, when I used to be in the military, the word training always pops up, basic training, that was trauma. That was an experience to go through. So these things remind me of that suffering to grow, to be better, to do better. I learned that the foundation of basic training in boot camp was physical and mental strength to carry out the military service. There was a reason for it, even though it made no sense to us at the moment. But looking back on it, it made me a better person. And I can look back and I spent one term in the military, and I looked back on it the day I was discharged, and I just kind of looked back and I thought, wow, I'm a lot more mature now than I was before I went in the military. I've learned so much. I've grown so much just in these few years. That was a good thing, and I look back and I think that was a good experience. And maybe we should encourage that a little more. I don't know. It depends on what you think about that. But certainly there's other ways of maturing and growing as well. Confidence and ability to make informed decisions was part of the training in basic training. Advanced knowledge of survival skills such as first aid, navigation, hand-to-hand combat. I also learned the unquestionable requirement of teamwork. The Bible teaches us about teamwork. In fact, in the very beginning in Genesis, the importance of man and woman. Not good for man to be alone, the Lord said. There's a mirroring, a coming together, being stronger together that comes from fellowship, from teamwork. And I think the studies still show, I know the old studies that I've read in the past demonstrate that couples who are married live longer than couples who are not married. There's something about that team, that helping each other, that adding to the strength of the other. It gives us something more. And we need that. Without it, all kinds of things. They've in the research, they've demonstrated that you're more sickly if you're single over time. You don't recover as well when things occur. You resolve things in a better fashion for couples, married couples rather than single individuals. There's a lot of benefits there that science is saying, hey, yeah, it's good to have a team. It's good to be together with others, not just that loner playing a video game or whatever else. I'm not speaking poorly of video games, but I'm saying we need that connection. And so what do you get? Some of the better video games, you got teams, and they might be in another country, but you're talking to them or you're seeing them on the screen and you're relating with them. That's team, certainly better if you're together as far as I'm concerned. But hey, we need that togetherness. So being sober, it's not the same as being recovered or in recovery. When we think of drinking or drugging, we immediately think of abstinence from substances or compulsions. But recovery is more than behavior. It's also about mental and emotional healing or balance. Extended sobriety, also known as long-term abstinence, though we've spoken about the initial abstinence, long-term abstinence, is when the addict surrenders to the admission and acceptance of a lifelong, one day at a time treatment process. Every day it's a treatment process, one day at a time. However, treatment and continued focus on abstinence is not enough to ensure recovery and a positive lifestyle. There's abstinence or sobriety, there's treatment, And then there's that lifelong work of recovery. The medical model calls the state of addiction a disease, and I don't dispute that. But let's look at it from that spiritual perspective. Metaphorically, think of it as a disease of selfishness that tempts us from our history, the temptations that come from our past, from evidence and facts, and toward our insatiable inner monster. What's that inner monster? Your mind, your body. I could say your body, which includes your mind. That's that inner monster. And biblically, it talks about the flesh being that inner monster, that part of us that desires selfishness. Yeah, the flesh, the addictive personality, we might call it in the addiction field. Because certainly when we drop down into the basement of the brain, as we've spoken of before, and I hope you listened to some of those previous programs where we've talked about the top half and the bottom half of the brain, thinking of it as the upper room and the basement of the brain. And when we're in that basement of the brain, the addictive personality, or the flesh, the selfish part of us, the self-protective part of us, where fear and apprehension is located down there, kicks into gear. So the flesh provokes strong emotions to keep the conscience. Where's the conscience? It's up here. It's in the upper room. The flesh provokes the conscience to activate a strong emotion to keep the conscience from being heard, from being recognized, and consumed by the terrors of unremedied selfishness. What happens when I realize I'm doing something wrong? My conscience is saying, oh no, don't do that, especially if your conscience has already been strengthened through a good life, through doing right things, through knowing the difference of right and wrong. Your conscience is saying, oh, don't do that. What have you just done? You don't want to face that. So what happens with the flesh? That addictive personality kicks in. Well, let's prevent the conscience from feeling that, from making you feel bad, from making you realize you did something wrong. Let's overreact in an exaggerated way of strength and power, or of anger, or even depression, or paranoia, or anything to distract emotionally from the good thinking, the right thinking that's in the upper room of the brain. If I can distract from that, then I'm not going to feel so bad. So when someone says a triggering word, something that's kind of reminding you didn't do something you were supposed to do, boom, you blow up, you get upset, and you give all these other reasons why you shouldn't have a bad feeling. Your conscience shouldn't be upset because look at what you've done. Look at what they've done. Look at this or look at that, to distract, defer, send it away so I don't have to feel it. It's unremedied selfishness because you can't fix it. I can't fix it. I can fix myself by working on it. I can't fix you if you're not going to work on it. If you don't see it, if you're in denial, what can I do but be encouraging, be supportive, be an example? And sometimes in addiction field, we may see someone who's not serious about their recovery, and we might say, after recognizing that there's sabotaging going on, you're just not ready. Get back with me later when you feel ready. Of course, they'll never say they're ready. But yeah, that's what happens. Sometimes we have to let them go to get to a place where they really are ready, where they've hit a final bottom instead of those false bottoms. In the Bible, all body parts form an entity known as flesh, governed by sin or selfishness. So the carnal nature, in the New Testament, it speaks of the carnal nature. That's the flesh nature, the selfishness, well, I want to do good, but I'm not going to give up all this stuff because I still like it. I still want to do it. That's still important to me. But I'll do this little piece here. So if I'm doing this little piece, then I should be okay. Why are you rejecting me? Look at what I'm doing here. But God looks at what you're doing over here in that carnal nature. And that's where the flesh is making you miserable and making everybody else miserable around you. So governed by that selfishness, that basement of the brain where there is flesh in all form of corruption or egotism or selfishness or narcissism or whatever word you want to use for that, where no good thing can live, no good thing can dwell in the basement of the mind, in the flesh of your being. Perhaps we can view the addictive personality as our inner monster, the flesh, representing our anti-God tendencies and desires in every aspect of our lives. The disease of selfishness, as we're looking at it metaphorically instead of medically, the disease of selfishness in addiction is the false prophet heralding the need for an authority, someone to listen to, someone to lead me. I need something to help me, and believe, because I'm going to make you the leader, the drug, the gambling, the sex, the whatever else that it might be. Lead me. I'm giving it over to you. I'm giving my power over to you, which basically is enslavement. But you wow me. Yeah, you make me feel good. Oh, so we look to the leader to wow us. We look to the charismatic leader, perhaps in politics or in government or whatever, however. Oh, there's someone that can lead us. And then are we going to be like sheep, or are we going to help in that process by helping things to go in the right direction, doing what we should be doing as well? So in addiction and recovery, we can't just expect the treatment program to do it all for us. Oh, well, I relapsed. It was the fault of the treatment program. They weren't as good as Harry's treatment program that he went to, or Mary's treatment program that they went to. It's the fault of the treatment program. No, it's the fault of you following the wrong leader, the selfishness, the flesh, and using those, whatever it might be, to take back control of your life. The combined tactics of the disease of selfishness and the God of addiction disconnect the mind from objective truth and disempower the individual from making their own informed choices, making the reason vulnerable to losing self-control and integrity. The Bible warned us against this when it says, if a prophet, which that prophet can be your addiction, or it could be that voice inside telling you something to do that's wrong, or it can be the drug, or the gambling, or whatever it might be. If a prophet or one who foretells by dreams appears among you and announces to you a sign or wonder, and if the sign or wonder spoken of takes place, and the prophet says, let us follow other gods, gods you have not known, and let us worship them. Let us worship the drug, the compulsive behavior, the gambling, the buying, the fleshly things, whatever they might be. Let us follow these other gods. Let us worship them. You must not listen to the words of that prophet or dreamer. The drug being the prophet or dreamer, or the person giving it to you, or the person saying, let's do this together. The Lord your God is testing you to find out whether you love him with all your heart and with all your soul. That's one way to look at it. It's a test. Are you going to say no to that and yes to doing right, or vice versa? Moses in the Bible identifies 3 sources leading people away from satisfaction, security, and significance. He identifies a false prophet leading the nation astray. He identifies an individual leading a family astray. And he identifies troublemakers leading a community away. Isn't that what happens in addiction oftentimes? That false prophet leading you away in some aspect, or an individual, or the troublemaker who comes over and says, hey, look what I got a hold of. Let's go and do this. The false gods are the manifestations of the disease of selfishness, affecting appearance, ability, age, friends, race, gender, home, work, family, or experience. Addiction contaminates everything. It doesn't just affect you. It doesn't just poison you. It poisons everything you come in contact with, everything that comes in contact with you. During long-term abstinence, it helps to think of the disease as selfishness. So be selfless, other-centered, reaching out, doing for others, because that's part of the recovery process. In those later stages, as you mature, there's a point where you're able now to think more of others than that selfishness that was once all-encompassing in you. The gods can be alcoholism, substance abuse, inhalant abuse, steroid misuse, compulsive gambling, eating, video gaming, shopping, or even sex. And I'm sure you can think of a number of others. By replacing, and that's an important word, by replacing the use and abuse of artificial highs from substances or compulsions, compulsions being a forceful urge to do something, or compulsions with natural highs from activity, they may achieve sobriety, but dampening recovery, weakening recovery, because they're still escaping to feel good. So instead of the drug, they switch what they're escaping to. Maybe it's exercise. Yeah, well, what's wrong with exercise? Well, if they're escaping and they're not doing it in a balanced way, in a proper way, now they become addicted to the exercise and they have to do it. And it's like a poison to the family. It takes you away from the family. It has the priority. You have to do it all the time. That's not helping the body either, is it? You know, you're weakening the body when you overdo those things. But that's escaping. It's not recovery. Remember, the 4 pillars of recovery are health, home, purpose, and community. And what is that? That's balance, isn't it? Fortunately, clinical Christian counseling, clinical pastoral counseling, and other forms of counseling, behavioral therapies, self-help groups, psychiatric medications tailored to specific compulsive disorders or issues, offer hope for effective treatment and recovery of any addiction. Biblical step 5 would say we're entirely ready to have God remove all these defects of character. As we confess our baseness and experience love and acceptance from God and humans, our shame is replaced with love and empowers us to heal. That suddenly, now I'm healing. There's a point in recovery where everyone tends to say at the around that same period, I'm healing. This can work. It's happening. They're feeling much better. They're doing better. The Bible says, Jesus explained further, what comes out of the mouth is an expression of what's in the heart, an expression of the character. Now think about that for a minute. What comes out of the mouth is an expression of what's in the heart, which is your character. So what comes out of my mouth? What are the things I'm saying through the day? Can that help me to identify things to work on? Can that help me to identify damage in my character? Okay, well, let me think. What are some of the things I might be doing? So it goes on to say, for evil originates from the infection of selfishness in the heart, such as, so here are some of the things to look for in you, or maybe in someone else, but you're the one that has to work on you. You can't work on someone else. Evil thoughts is an example of that. Are you speaking reflections of bad thinking, evil thinking, sexual perversion? Are you thinking it? If you're thinking it, you're speaking it. If you're speaking it, that's something to work on. So in speaking it, maybe you're telling dirty jokes all the time. Maybe you're laughing too much at those dirty jokes. Maybe something else. If it's coming out of your mouth, it's in your heart. Murder. That doesn't mean you're actually murdering somebody, but as Jesus said, if you think it in your thoughts, if you entertain the thought, then you've committed the sin. So if you entertain thoughts of, I wish you were dead, well, you have spiritually murdered that person in your mind. You're also speaking it, which is letting you know, hey, you got to work on that. There's a character defect there that you can work on and improve. Dishonesty, thinking, speaking, well, they're not going to notice if I slip this in my pocket before it goes through the scanner. You see these videos all the time of people that are doing those things in those grocery stores with the scanners, and they're just kind of slipping it into the bag, thinking no one's knowing. That's just dishonesty. It's a character defect. Keep doing it, it just gets stronger. Stop it, it gets weaker. And as you stop it, your character gets stronger. Theft, betrayal of trust, greed, cruelty, deception, the Bible goes on to say, vulgarity, envy, evil speaking, which evil speaking is speaking ill of others, gossip, pride, foolishness. All these destructive deviations from God's design, the scripture says, come from inside and are what makes a person impure. Damaged character. Hey, if you're noticing that you're gossiping, or if you're noticing you're saying bad things about people, okay, maybe it's legit. Maybe that person is a bad person. But are you saying it in a constructive way to help the person or to figure out how to help the person? Or are you saying it in a destructive way with ill intentions, turning someone else against that person, so you speak poorly about that person? Reflection of damaged character, reflection of a heart that needs changing, needs improving, a flesh that's too strong needs to be in recovery and work harder in recovery. Well, I hope this was helpful for you today. We're going to continue on this recovery subject next time. May your troubles be more minor, blessings more, and happiness come through your door. God bless. We'll see you next time.